2 weeks. It's been like 2 weeks.
It's
I didn't realize it was 2
forever
weeks.
crazy, bro. You know, like the pinnacle for a mile.
Welcome everyone to the West Milton Council Workshop for July 23rd, 2024. Start off by, I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hurst.
Present.
Ms. Metz.
Here.
Mr. Sodders.
Here.
Mr. Dorman.
Here.
Ms. Gregory.
Here.
Mr. Fogel.
Here.
Mr. Horn.
Here. Thank you. First thing on the agenda is the 571 Trail Project Light. Mr. Sheridan.
Thank you, Mayor. Invited a couple of gentlemen from Choice One, and they will address this issue and hopefully answer any of your questions. You're up, gentlemen.
My name's Andy Schumann, Choice One Engineering. This is Brad Walters, our office, Choice One Engineering. I believe you have in the packet some information on streetlights for the trail on 571 at the bridge that we were working on. Some decisions need to be made by council on style of light this evening so we can keep moving forward. So I'll let Brad talk a little bit more in detail and answer any questions you may have, see put the packet together for you guys.
So a little background about this is that due to the lack of funding, the full lighting really wasn't attainable. So we are trying to look at reducing either by just providing the lights for the bridge or completely removing it, or also providing only lighting for the path. Our recommendation is to provide lights for the entire roadway and path. Really, if you're putting light poles out there and light fixtures, it's in your best interest to provide light for the roadway and the path. There's not a whole lot of cost savings by only doing the path as opposed to doing the roadway. You already have the cost of the pole, all the conduit, the wiring. So our recommendation is to do the roadway and the path, but it's open to discussion of what you guys prefer.
I think at the moment, our plan was to apply this fall for additional funding for lighting, which would come later if we're awarded for this project. So tonight, the decision is the style. In the package, you have some examples, and I think we need a decision as soon as possible on if any of these styles are your preference, or if you want to see other options, but we need to make a call very quickly to move forward.
In reading through all this with the questions, from my perspective, looking at this, I would totally agree that we would want to light the entire roadway and the path for safety reasons. We might as well do it all while we're doing this. My question is to probably you and Ben. It says here on the first page, we will set up the power service and pull boxes so the lighting can be extended to the east and west of the bridge in the future as funding becomes available. So what is our cost? That's not included in the $125,000 estimate, right? That's cost that we'll have to incur additionally, is that correct?
The additional cost, I think, would be in the next phase. That would not be in the initial phase for the lighting on the bridge is estimated at 125. Is that correct?
Correct.
So these additional efforts would be the next phase, assuming we got additional funding.
Okay.
And I don't think we have an estimate on that. I think 855 was the total, but I would expect it to be higher if you're doing it after the trail's already constructed. Is that correct?
I would assume that it'd be the 455. So the
Oh, excuse me,
for the-
455,
yeah,
not
so-
8.
So that would be for the full
Get that
lighting.
number stuck in my head. I'm sorry, Counselor. Yes, the 455. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so you can almost take the difference. There will be a slight increase probably for someone to have to remobilize out there. However, it shouldn't be much more than the difference between the 455 and 125.
Thank you.
Because we're not having to tear up anything existing. We would avoid that.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, are you done?
Yep, go for it.
So when you say light the path only or the path and the roadway, you're talking about the difference in the height and the reach of the lights that go on the bridge?
Correct. So either light, so it's essentially just a different fixture. We would have a shorter arm on the pole, so that way it would be pushed further close right over the path. Otherwise, we'd have maybe a 5 foot or 7.5 foot longer arm for the pole, and then a stronger wattage of a luminaire. So it's really not much of a cost difference when you're installing it.
And the option that we're looking at with the current proposed plan is the standard mono arm, which is this, I believe it's the second picture here.
Correct.
But it looks like to me, I think the other ones look a little nicer aesthetically, in my opinion. I thought that standard truss arm high-rise would be better if it's the roadway and the path, to me, in my mindset, but I don't know, I'm not an engineer, so I'm looking for your guidance on that. What's the difference in the cost of the standard mono arm with the standard truss arm with the low rise and the high rise? What's the difference in the price point?
The price point, you're looking about the same, maybe a couple $100 swing either direction. So there's not really much of a price concern.
Okay. I just like the way the standard truss arm high rise looks, in my opinion. I don't know what everybody else on council thinks. I like that a little.
The second one from the left?
It's the first, it's the, this one.
The very
It's
right
the
side.
one on the far right,
Gotcha.
the one on the far right.
So any of these would light up trail and it's
Correct.
just which one we like.
Yep, this is completely aesthetic.
Okay. I mean,
Right.
I think I like a mono arm, if I had to say. Never picked out a street light before.
My semi-serious question first, which one most closely matches the bridge lights around the horseshoe at Ohio State? I think we want to match that first, Ben. So that's the semi-serious question. The more serious question is, when we look at the only 3 lights across the bridge, there's a concrete barrier going across the bridge, right, between the pedestrians and the
Correct.
lane? So that's like the safest place
Correct.
for our pedestrians. Does that concrete wall between the pedestrians and the road carry all the way up to the development?
No, it's only on the bridge.
So we're prioritizing the lighting of the safest zone over the priority of the unsafest zone.
That's one way to describe it. I think the idea was it was going to be more expensive to retrofit the bridge later than it would if we could do it now. Is that
Because-
accurate?
On the south side of the bridge, people leaving town along the concrete barrier, there's going to be reflective inserts along the barrier all the way, right? Usually something like that, there's something like that, so headlights at night are going to catch that. And they're going to see the barrier, that's so that the drivers don't hit the barrier. So I guess my question is, are we thinking about it backwards from a safety standpoint? Just food for thought.
I don't believe you're wrong. Again, the reasoning for adding the bridge as opposed to another location had to do with the cost of retrofitting a second phase. It was less expensive, and ODOT was more comfortable adding them to the bridge or doing it all. It was either just the bridge or everything. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
And you said to move forward with the project, we have to do the lighting, agree on the lighting now, right?
As soon as possible, yeah. The timetable moving forward to keep it from slowing down our ability to get the project started, we need to make that decision in terms of the submittals that the engineers have to make to ODOT. We're approximately 18 months away from the timetable of hopefully beginning construction. 18 to 24 months, maybe? I thought that's what Alan had told me.
Just thinking it is in the next year, right?
18 months, yeah. And that's with cutting a year off, because we were able to convince ODOT we didn't need any right-of-way acquisition. They had a year built in for that.
Council have any other questions?
So, understanding then, this project, it'll take 18 months to get the lights up, is that right?
It'll take 18 months to get the project started, to actually start constructing the trail. And as a
Okay.
part of that, the lights will be installed on the bridge, if that's the decision you make. Right
So-
now, that's where you're at, but I guess it's not too late to change that if you wish.
So we're looking at the construction starting in 2026. Like it would start like springtime?
Somewhere in there.
Yep.
I'm sure it's something to do with ODOT that stops us from putting a concrete, those temporary ones through there and making it safe for kids
I'm-
crossing that bridge now.
I'm not, oh, now?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
the ODOT start is, yes, would stop that.
I'm neutral in style. So I don't know if you want to pick two and poll everybody or do it by email tomorrow.
I think everybody,
I'm also neutral in style.
I'd say everybody circle your choice and leave it with,
Okay.
leave it with Jeff on the way out the door. I think
I'll go
that'll.
with that, that's fine.
I will contact you tomorrow then with the decision on the style. But we're staying with on the bridge and applying this fall for a next round for lights.
Yeah. I think that makes sense.
And how do we officially go about approving this at this?
Well, at this point, I'm going to take your word for it and notify our engineer. I don't believe it requires official action in a regular council meeting.
Okay, I just wanted
No,
to make sure.
that's a good question.
Yeah.
Everyone comfortable with that?
Yep, because it is 125K, so I just wanted to make sure that we were, you know.
But we're not spending the money. This is more just what
Style.
style do you
Oh,
want to
okay,
spend money on?
okay, okay.
Money related.
Got it. I'm good with that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the employee health insurance update.
All right, as council may recall, we took a bit of a different path this year in regards to the employee health insurance. In the past, the manager, working with the finance director, made most of the decisions, did most of the work as far as the renewal for next year's employee health insurance. This year, I wanted to get the employees more involved, and so we formed a committee with representatives from each of the departments. And Megan is one of the members of the committee. Our finance director is out of the state, so she's going to give you a brief update on what the committee's recommendations are going to be. Obviously, the final decision will be up to me working with you. There's some good news on the budget, but if you would like to go ahead and give them an update, Megan, please.
Yeah. So this year, we looked at not just Anthem, but some other plans that might be relatively cheaper on the long front for the village. Unfortunately, Anthem was our choice. The great thing was they came back with us with a 0% increase, which is awesome because we were a little worried that it was gonna be like 12% like it was the last time. So for them to come back as a 0% was fantastic. The committee talked about wanting to have a richer plan that included like prescription fee, like lower cost for prescriptions. So we worked with Yasmin, who is our contact with McGowan Braybender, and she finally sent us the plans that we have, and we're gonna choose two plans, the high deductible, but still have the HSA, and then one option of a PPO plan, which unfortunately does not have the ability to have a HSA. However, it has much better prescription prices, which a few employees had requested that. So people now have an option. There'll be, like I said, two with the HSA, one with a higher deductible and one with a little bit smaller deductible. But the goal would be to having those two plans, adding that third one, so that people actually have an option of the difference. We also talked about with that PPO plan, it might cost a little more for the village, so the employee would potentially pay the offset of that. That hasn't been something, it was just something we were looking into. Nothing has been like fully decided about that, but just if someone was looking for a richer plan, that they would be required to pay some towards that premium because it would be a higher price. On a positive, we're having a better option for dental and vision, which is another request that employees had. So we were excited that we had other options than just the one option that we had prior. So being able to choose those, and we're going to meet one more time to finalize once Yasmin has sent us the options for the 3 plans. Once we finalize which ones to go with, then we can definitely come back on that. And I also do have one other thing from Jill, if that's okay. So we're coming up to August. Special assessments will be configured basically after this billing cycle, and then we'll bring it to you guys once we get the list set up for the assessments from the utilities. So we're working on that, and we should have that in August. It's just like any of the other ones in August, but Jill wanted to make sure you were aware that that's something that's going to be coming up as well.
And this list will be bigger this year,
Yeah.
just because of the curve that's been added on to the assessments and that kind of thing too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for the new counselor and those who may not recall, the special assessments have to do for delinquent water, sewer refuse, lawn cutting, anything where the village has to go in and expend because the homeowner hasn't gone into compliance. So we do it once a year. This year, as Ben explained, it'll be a little more extensive because we've had some more projects. But it must be approved by the council before we submit them to the county to place on the property taxes.
All right. All right. What percentage of our employees utilize the health insurance benefit, or take those benefits?
Ooh, I'm going to estimate 85 or 90%.
Okay.
I think it's
Awesome.
95%. Not so much the vision and dental, I'll be honest, because it wasn't super. But the new one coming up, I do believe that some people might be more interested because it does have a lot of coverage in our area, whereas the other one was not as convenient for coverage in our like Troy, Tip, Dayton area. A lot of it was mainly Montgomery County offices that would accept that insurance. So we did really look into that as well to make sure that it was people that were closer to this area accepted that insurance.
Any other questions?
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the proposed new fire truck.
Council to get all the information I sent and I can answer any questions you may have. The offer still exists if you want to come to the station and you like to do it, show you the equipment, answer questions one-on-one.
I would welcome that. It's been a long time. We did that before. I remember when you were on the fire department as well, we had that updated tour of all the different equipment and so forth, so I would definitely welcome that as a refresher. I have several questions, but I don't want to take over, see if anybody else has questions in reference to the fire truck and what our options are on the table.
Go ahead and ask.
Go ahead.
You got him.
Okay, all right. So I know that I was on council when everything went through with the ladder truck, and that used truck was purchased from Texas. I know there were some things that were communicated with the pros and cons about going to a new truck, and it sounds like there's going to have to be 2 new trucks in the near term, both with the fire company and the fire department. So what are our real options out there? Have you explored it much on the used front, like what was done with the ladder truck? Are there any options out there that you've researched at all that we could look into. I know they're few and far between because once one comes up that's available and good, you gotta jump on it because that's what happened with the ladder truck when it was in Texas.
Correct.
You know, we had to move pretty quickly with that. So just,
And we found, not looking extensively, but we found a truck similar to what we wanted. And it was in Pennsylvania. It was a 2019, so several years old, but pretty much exactly what we want. They wanted $850,000 for it. So for another $150,000, you can get a brand new truck with all
With
the
the warranty.
warranties. So we didn't think that was a good option. Now,
okay.
there may be something else out there, but the ladder, for a new ladder, you're looking at 1.3, 1.5 million easily. And I don't think it makes sense for West Milton to buy a brand new ladder truck, just because of the cost.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate with what we have. That truck's a great truck, and I plan on refurbing it in 2028. And depending on how much work we do on it is what it'll cost. But I'm planning for about a $500,000 refurb to extend its life another 10 years.
Now, that's the ladder truck we just got several years back?
Right, in 2018.
So in 2028,
That
You're-
truck will be 20 years old.
so you're looking at, it would be another 500K to refurb that
Refurb
one to
it.
get it for another 10 years.
Right.
And, go ahead.
Sorry, can I add
Nope,
on to
you
that?
go-
So in
go for it.
2038, you would anticipate replacing that ladder truck?
Because it would be at 30 years old, and for NFPA requirements, recommendations, I guess, they prefer that you don't have anything over 30 years old. And we come up against that with our turnout gear, our self-contained breathing apparatus, so.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand something too with engine 71. That's the fire company's truck that was refurbed
Correct.
back in 2018.
2018.
So that technically, as it stands now, with the NFPA standards, guideline, what have you, that one's technically okay with standards until 2028 as well, correct?
Correct,
Okay, because when it was refurbed, it was good for 10 years.
correct.
Okay. So we have the fire company, which is through the township, roughly has 3 years, a little over 3 years, to plan on a replacement for that truck as
Correct.
well.
And we want to replace it with something similar to what we're asking for now. Because it fits our needs perfectly. And when those trucks were bought, the department truck and the company truck, in 1998, they were exactly the same,
Sister trucks, right?
sister trucks.
Okay.
And then when we refurbished engine 71, we went with roll-up doors and added LED lights, tried to bring it up to date with NFPA requirements for lighting.
And if what I read right here, the first truck that goes out right now is the ladder truck, is that right?
In the village,
In the village,
correct.
okay. This is probably a big question, and this will probably be better for when we take the tour, but I'm just curious with the current fleet. How many vehicles, trucks that the fire department currently has, and how many the fire company has? What's the difference between the?
Fire department has the ladder, engine 72, and the grass truck. And then the company has the engine 71, the tanker 71, the utility truck, and the rescue.
And the rescue.
And the rescue is our newest truck, company truck.
Okay.
It's a 2012.
When I look over some of these things on warranty information and just some of the information that I don't even know how to think about in terms of fire truck, but when it talks about the years and the miles, I can't imagine that we ever get one of these vehicles up to 100,000 miles or 150,000 miles compared to the years. I would think that they time out on years way before they ever get anywhere close to the mileage, correct?
Unless we are in a paid department that's doing 40,000 runs a year, you're not gonna see that. The ladder has 68,000 miles,
And it had how many when we got it?
probably 66. You know, we don't drive them a lot. When you pump, the odometer is running. It's like driving down the road, but we don't wear the equipment out, it rusts out. The pipes and the pumps and the valves.
Well, sometimes not driving them is almost as bad
It's
as
hard.
maintenance-wise as
Correct.
regularly driving.
And for a long time, we rotated engine 71 and engine 72 as first out, just for that reason. But since we refurbed engine 71 and 72 doesn't pass pump test now, so we can't pull a draft real well with it, we stopped doing that. It'll still pump, but you can't pull a good draft.
So really then, thinking about all this in the grand scheme of things, we really need to have like a 5-year capital improvement plan across the board for the fire trucks, because one, we're gonna have to replace engine 72 in the near term or find a replacement. And then in 2028, we're gonna have another 500K that's gonna be for the ladder truck refurbishment. So we've got about $1.6 million here that we've got to plan for over the next 4 to 5 year period.
I could be wrong, but I would expect the chief would be very happy to put together a 5-year plan to show you what the future looks like with each of the trucks.
Which I have a spreadsheet put together now. So,
You've been at, I know Ben's not currently in the fire department, but I know both you guys have been on it for a bit apart for a long time. Did they ever do a forward-looking forecast for that, or has it always just been scramble when the need arises and?
Not much of a,
yeah. When I became chief, I went through the information that was there, and I think I found one 5-year plan,
And
which was quite dated.
NFPA stands for,
National Fire Protection Agency.
okay, and what is their, is it like an advisory set of information, or is it a law?
Yeah, they're advisory, it's recommendations, but if there's an incident, fatality caused by a failure of
That's whose
equipment,
information they're looking at to support the.
correct, they'll look at that and say, well, you don't follow this recommendation. So,
They're the people doing the testing and putting their
Correct.
skin in the.
correct. And that's why I use recommendation instead of requirement.
Well, me, myself, I would recommend we do the tour as soon as possible. And I know this is something that ultimately, next month starts the finance meeting. This is something that we're really gonna have to dig into and see what we ultimately can afford to do and really take a close look at all this. So that would be great information, and if you could have that for when we have that meeting, that 5-year capital plan, or even 10-year. That would be beneficial.
So would it help if, Chief, you want to come up with some dates in the next couple of weeks that would work for you, and then I can poll the council as to your availability on one or more of those dates?
Great.
That'd give you time to put together the 5-year.
I think I actually have a 50-year plan put together, but,
I'd be very surprised if it took you very long to put that together.
I would welcome the opportunity to learn more about what our wonderful fire department does too, and how we can best support the needs too.
yeah,
I think having a long-term plan would be helpful, just so we can make sure that there's like an account somewhere that we're putting money into, because I don't want in 2038 for whoever is the fire chief to be going, I need money for a new truck, when we know today that we're gonna need a new truck in 2038. Like, we've got time today. In 2030, we don't want in 2034 them to be having this conversation going, you knew 10 years ago.
and we've talked about that in the past, but, yep, good idea.
Just asking, one other one. Do you think that there, and I know this is maybe really reaching, but, I mean, do you think there is a possibility of a used truck that might pop up out there that's maybe 5 or 6 years old, that's 700,000 or 600,000, that would be worth it, or is that a stretch?
I think it's a,
That's-
Okay.
If it was, it would go so fast, you'd never, unless you were the first one to look at it, it'd be gone.
You'd have the
Unless
loan
you-
arranged and
unless you have the inside
pre-bid
track.
financing
Yep.
secured.
Yep.
Well, I'm a coupon guy, and I'm a frugal fogel, so I'm always looking for, I'm always looking for the deal, you know what I
You
mean?
start looking, and when you find it, get your check.
You get
I
on
might
eBay
start
fire
looking.
trucks and keep an eye out.
Yeah, I'll start looking, yeah. I had one other question. What about Laura and Ludlow? I'm just curious, because there are sister communities that also support if we have fires and issues. How are they with their trucks and their fleet?
they replace them on that plan. Every 30 years, they buy a new truck.
Okay.
And they have engines and tankers, which I don't feel the tanker should have to be replaced that often. But, because it's a semi, basically.
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
Ms. Kumar?
How difficult would it be to put together like a 5-year plan for your equipment replacement also? Like,
Mhm.
I know we did radios here recently.
Right.
There may be more radios that we need to get to bring you completely up to replace them
Well,
all, but.
With this last purchase with that, excuse me, it's supposed to be delivered the 28th of July. We'll have 24 radios, so one for each firefighter, which was my goal. So those should be good for another 10 to 15 years.
And then the other thing would be like your, the different like respirators and tanks, jackets, pants, boots, all that stuff.
Right, and next year, it'll be 5 years since we bought this last group. And I was going to start working on buying cylinders and a few air packs every 5 years, so we can work those in, instead of buying everything at once.
Right, yeah. Yeah. I don't know if that's difficult to put together. I mean, depending on how old the equipment is, you know, because you guys know when, you know, like.
Right.
So, that way, we can better plan and, you know, in addition to the trucks, you know, the other stuff.
Now, like I said, I have something like that put together, so I have to go through and revise the cost based on current cost, but at least it'll give us an idea.
All right, thank you.
One last question. Well, you want to go? I don't care. I just want to know the role of a tanker within our fire department and the role of it in town versus out of town, like the role of the tanker versus the fire company versus the fire department.
Which I guess technically it's a tender, not a tanker. People in California would laugh at that. They fly tankers, they don't, you know. But, yeah, in town, we don't usually use a tanker.
Okay.
Um,
Because we got
connect
fire
a
hydrants
hydrant.
everywhere, right?
Right. We have used tanker on occasion if we want more water than what the hydrants can supply. That give us a little surge. But engine we use all the time.
Okay.
So I was looking at the lead time is over 2 years. So it says there's a $50,000 discount if you pay it in full. I would assume that means when the order's placed.
Correct.
And then you don't see it for over 2 years. So the other question is, I guess that was more of a statement than a question. E1, I'd never heard of them before. I mean, not that I'm fluent in fire trucks, but I heard of Pierce and Spencer. What's their history? I mean,
E1's been around a long time. So Rosenbauer, E1, Pierce, Suffens are your primary manufacturers. Spencer's a small company out of Michigan. We looked at them. They've got a nice truck, put out a really nice truck, but we just didn't feel like it fit our needs. So we did look for different options. And there are some other companies that are not as well known, but we don't feel comfortable with them.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. So a question for the manager would be information on how financing on something like this. I mean, it's,
All right.
you know, what are we looking at for a $1 million+ loan? Does it make sense to get the loan at the time of order, pay it all up front, so you get the discount to save $50,000? Because we're always looking to save what you can.
I doubt it, but.
Yeah, I know,
we'll,
because that may not,
We'll start working on
Right.
what your options are for paying and or financing a
right,
purchase that.
because it may not make sense to actually do that if you
Right.
don't have to pay for, until you get it. So that gives you more time to
to
raise the
accumulate
money.
some funds,
Right, so if you could put something together on what the financial end of things look like,
Will do,
especially as we go into budget season.
will do.
Is there any money that's currently in the capital budget for the fire department that has been set aside for this from year to year?
Our finance director's been out of state for 2 weeks. I don't believe so, but I would have to check with Jill to be sure. Should have.
There is some, but
There is some there. I'm not sure how much is there.
Okay.
Yeah, I
it's
know
not $1
she
million,
has.
right?
No.
Yeah.
And Abbey Credit Union, if you're listening, if I open a checking account with you, will you save me 0.5%? On a $1 million loan, that might be worthwhile.
I don't think the village by state law can do business with a credit union.
Oh.
So is it the fire capital, is that the truck? I mean, that's what we'd be talking about, right? So the 2024 budget, we allotted $75,000 to go into the fire capital, but there was expensive radio and things like that also come out of that, so.
Yeah, there's a separate line item for fire truck.
Yeah, it's, I hadn't found it yet. Anyway, okay. Go ahead.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Chief.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the WMPA update. And Mr. Beck, I
I
believe.
believe Mr. Beck is on his way.
He's on his way. He's on his way.
We should have all left the room while he was in between.
Said it before, I say it again, I like speaking this because I don't have to be on camera. 'Cause I can't put myself on TV, so that's great. I just want to take a minute and just sort of pick your brains, just looking ahead at investments for the next couple of years. I got a window coming up, probably 2026, maybe into 2027. it'd be a good time and a practical time to look at doing some upgrades in the council room. I mean, these cameras are 11 years old, these microphones, 1992. So in that regards, as I'm trying to look ahead and sort of get an idea what I need to know what you guys would like and need. A couple examples would be some monitors in front of you to where if there's a PowerPoint, you could see it right there in front of you. Could be laptops where you could run the PowerPoints. I would like to drop a couple monitors from the ceiling. We got a high enough ceiling here. One could be the broadcast, one could be the agenda or set PowerPoints or what have you. Those are a few ideas that I have. Mute buttons, so if you have to cough or something, you can hit a mute button. Won't give you an on-off button because you'll turn it off and not turn it back on. That's been my experience, but I'll definitely get you a mute button when we do that. So I just wanted to get some ideas of what you think you might like, how you would like it to work, so I can maybe include that in what I'm going to do, so it all works together and is a nice, happy system. Everything's going IT, all the videos going internet protocols. And, you know, video's a big computer network anymore. So if you guys are interested in things like that, that's the time to just sort of make it all mesh and work nice together. So any suggestions or ideas?
Are you looking to redo like the camera systems or?
Yeah, these cameras, I'd probably get some IP cameras. Like I said, the microphones are well overdue. And then like I said, if you want monitors, then at that point I could feed whatever to the monitors, or you could send stuff back to me, and like I said, it would just give you a conversions. You know, or if you wanted to set up a system where you could take a question off of X or whatever too, we could incorporate that into there too. But knowing what you want to do or think you would like will help me sort of build out the structure and the ecosystem and get an idea and start working on it. It's going to take a little while to
Just
figure
take the
all that
last idea you put and just exit on there.
I was just trying to think ahead a little bit, yeah.
That's what the podium's for, is those kind of questions.
I know, but yeah.
I do like the idea of having the mute button, and I do like the idea of having some type of tablets for council to be able to see things, you know, like especially as all this paper goes digital. It just, you know, we're killing
Right.
trees day in and day
Right.
out. We do receive this information now electronically, but I think it would be almost nice if council members had city supplied just a tablet that didn't anything expensive.
Yeah, and then it would have the advantage too, like, you know, you're looking at your lights there. When you're talking about the lights, I'd have the ability to bring it up so they can see what the lights are looking
absolutely.
at. So, yeah,
I mean,
just
What
add
we're
some more-
seeing is also on the big screen there.
More interactivity is
Sure,
essentially
sure.
would be the goal.
Yeah.
I actually like the idea of like, because I was thinking that as you were talking about having monitors, like tablets that we can like, instead of this much paper,
Mhm.
we can just scroll through
Yeah.
it, use one of those iPencils and write whatever, and then it's there. So
Okay.
then, because like, I have a lot of paper. I can't imagine what Scott Fogel has at his house, but I've got a lot of paper in my house.
I have
File cabinets.
I have binders and cabinets from
Yeah.
council years.
I
so,
believe that.
Yeah,
I think the screens are good too, just so everyone can see, like you said, the
Mhm.
lights or the fire truck or whatever we're talking about or that we got in our
Alright.
packets.
Great.
I think it'd be awesome too, is if you're working it into, as we're talking about it, that it can be shared with the
Right.
viewers at home on YouTube.
That'd
you know,
be the
so
goal.
that it's interchangeably, that, you know, boom, it's up there, it's also on the screen for everybody to see at home that doesn't come to these meetings, because I do know there are 150, 300 people that pretty routinely watch
Right.
some of so.
And it gives you some advantages too, if you go digital like that too, like, you know, you could post links into YouTube video, or somebody wanted to look at something, they could click on it and, you know, bring it up and look at it on their own after the fact. I'm just trying to think forward a little bit, and like I said, get where my stuff complements what you guys want and just make a better overall flow
But
of
if
information.
Me and Councilman Fogel's avatars, do they have to not have hair, or can we?
That's up to you.
Yeah, I like
I haven't had hair since I was 17.
I know.
I think it's a great idea. I would love to be able to do something to brighten the room up here and do a little renovating. I think that would be great
I was
as
going to
well.
bring that up as well.
Yeah.
I think the latest thing we got was our logo about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
This room hasn't changed much since
It-
1990 or so.
It would be great to do a little updating. My
Say 1970
thought is,
something.
because you know everything that's out there, bells and whistles,
I got some
that
ideas.
you think would be good, I would just look for you to put together a plan that you could share with us with options that are out there.
All right, I'll start
And
poking
that-
around.
That way, just like we said with the fire department, the budget meeting's coming up.
Yep.
We could plan through 2026, 2027, putting some money in capital, so it doesn't all hit us at once, and we could look at that. So that would be my
All right.
recommendation, if you wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
I'll start that process. And just, when I started in November of 1985, these chairs and those desks were in this room. They predate me.
Really?
Yeah, so.
Okay. yeah,
And
it's time
we
for
got
an
our
update.
money's worth out of them. They've lasted, but yeah. So, that, you know, if we're going to be doing all that stuff, yeah, if you guys want to throw in a new coat of paint or some new drop, you know, that'd be the time to do all that all at once. 'Cause-
Maybe all the council members could come in and paint.
Or reconfigure the room or whatever. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get started on the process. I just wanted to see where you guys were with it before I invested the time in that.
Sounds great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
The retro. All right. Next on the agenda is the proposed sidewalk ordinance.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. In your packet is a copy of the proposed ordinance that our intern helped with drafting. I've asked Mr. Herron to hit some of the highlights. It would be our intent to have this on the agenda for the next council meeting unless the mayor and council think otherwise. Ben, you want to hit some of the
Sure.
highlights of the changes?
So we've been talking a lot about sidewalks. The problem is our ordinance was very standard. It didn't hit all the sidewalk situations that we run into. Plus, we're adding pedestrian trails, so we want to make sure to get those in. So Jonathan basically took what we had and did a very good job at updating it. I mean, the whereas pretty much spell out what the ordinance is for, but again, it's adding trails and a much-needed section of lots of different issues sidewalk can have, not just a trip hazard or falling apart in some way, shape, or form. It actually spells out what the problems are, so the community knows when we send a letter or talk to them what exactly is going on with the sidewalk. So it just brings our sidewalk ordinance into the modern era, especially at a time when we're looking at trying to add or improve our sidewalks. So, good job to Jonathan. This takes a lot of time, so.
Any questions or comments about the proposed ordinance?
I have a question about section D. It talks about the notice that's provided to individuals if their sidewalk, curb, gutter, driveway approach, or crosswalk need to be addressed, repaired, or maintenance. I'm just curious, you know, I'm sure this year it's a lot more because of the milling and what you're doing at Hamilton and Stillwater and so forth. But on a given year, how many notices go out to people in the village that have to do some type of maintenance or updates with their curbs? I mean,
Then I'm gonna offer my perception, but then you elaborate or correct me. Right now, not that many, because the current ordinance is so vague. And so we don't really enforce a lot. When we get a complaint, we'll look into it. But with the emphasis on walkability and making the community more friendly and age appropriate so that folks feel comfortable getting out and walking, there's a much greater emphasis on trying to improve our infrastructure and fill in the gaps where we don't have sidewalks. So as you know, we've talked about creating a sidewalk program to act as a carrot to encourage folks to either add sidewalk where there isn't any and make connections or repair sidewalk that's in bad shape. So I would expect, if the council agrees, that going forward, there'll be much more emphasis and more notices going out to make those repairs.
And the sidewalk program would be a separate ordinance as well, or would
It
that?
would be a separate program in
Program.
response to the ordinance.
Okay,
Ben, would you agree?
Yeah, okay.
okay. So that, once this would go through, then we could ultimately bring that on top of it, because we would want them to kind of coincide with each other since we're
Sure.
we're doing this. So, again, another thing, we gotta look in the budget on what we can set aside for
Right.
this upcoming year to start that program, but,
For example, I would expect going forward, just as Mr. Herron looks at curbs when we're doing what streets, that we would add sidewalks to that, and the same kind of a deal. If you get a bid for someone to put in so many feet of sidewalk at a better deal, and the sidewalk needs to be replaced or at least repaired, just as the curb does, that's the time to do it.
my only other question is, it says, "The time shall be reasonable, but shall not be less than 30 days for construction and not less than 5 days for repairs." Is that a good time frame? Is that a good enough time frame for someone to contract on their own to replace their sidewalk or their curb or their, I mean,
I would suggest it's gonna depend on the time of year, and I would expect it to be implemented the same way we do almost all the other code enforcement. If they're cooperative and working with us, I think the village will give them adequate time to make the repair.
okay.
If
I'm
they're
good with
not,
that.
then that's the minimum, you have 30 days.
Okay. Sounds good.
5 days for repairs though, I feel is not much.
I know, when I saw that kind of raised
Put in
my eyebrow a
whatever
little
number the
bit.
council would like. And, I mean, it's gonna be better than what we've got now. So if you wanna give them more time, I don't think staff has any problem with that.
Well,
Again,
doesn't-
if they need more time and they're willing to make the repairs, we give them more
All
time.
right.
Doesn't that read as a minimum?
Yes, that's.
So
in
it
the-
can't be less, but it can be more.
Correct,
So,
correct.
So our ordinance says you can't make them do it in 4 days, but you can let them have 14 or 30.
Exactly.
because a repair could depend, and that's a wide open,
Yes.
you know, and it also depends on the season and who's available and, okay.
What's the typical rule on, we're putting in sidewalks somewhere in town that they're not existing, and you gotta go around a nice 75-year-old mature healthy tree? I mean, like, there's some spots in towns where they've
Yeah,
curved around it, but what, is that,
I think that's a case by case.
Yeah, I don't think there is a rule of thumb. Obviously, if the homeowner wanted to retain the tree, you try to work with them, but, that would be, have to be decided on a case-by-case basis.
okay,
If you
because
could-
there's a couple spots in town where
Yeah.
there's a curve in the sidewalk, you don't know why, but you
Sure.
look over in their yard, you can see the
Right.
depression where the tree used to be.
Yeah.
If you can put in a sidewalk that still meets all the code.
That's
and-
what I
and
wanted to,
Then yes, you could work around it.
okay.
But if it's not possible to make it handicap accessible, for example, or meet the minimum 4 feet, then you might have to take, the tree might have to go, but, or it might have to go at some point, depending on the age of the tree and the cooperation of the home.
Okay. 'Cause I'm just thinking of a couple
No,
places in town
it's
where
a
we
good
need to
question.
put them, and I'm going right where the sidewalk would be. There's, I mean, we need them for student safety, for the kids walking to school, and I'm thinking, man, those trees have been there longer than I've been on earth, you know?
It's gonna be a lot more walking this year.
Yeah, and that plays into it too. There's more need than ever. So, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Is council comfortable this being on the agenda for the next regular meeting?
Yes.
Very good.
All right, next is the vacant building registration ordinance.
Thank you, Mayor. As council's very well aware, this has been discussed multiple times. The last step, we received input from a couple of councilmen, and our law director made an effort to try to incorporate those comments into a draft. At this point, I just need some direction. I believe I'm aware of most of the council's position. I don't believe there's enough to pass it. I will be happy to continue to work on it if that's what you want, but I need to know specifically what changes you want. If it's the wish of the council to drop it for the moment, certainly staff has no problem with that. I would remind you, the whole reason this was brought up was my perception of a desire on the mayor and council to take code enforcement to the next level, and this was a way of doing that. So, if you're not interested in taking that step, that's fine. I don't want to move in a direction that's inconsistent with your desires. But if you want to continue to work on it, or you have specific changes you want to make, communicate that, and we'll make those changes on a draft and bring it back to you. It's really whatever you want.
My thought, as I shared by email probably 2 weeks ago now, is that we need something very simple to start with. When we came up, or when we started talking about this, the idea was that we don't know how many vacant buildings we have, and that we need a way to find out. And so I don't have a problem with that, but all of the, I'll call them bells and whistles in this, to me are too much too fast.
Okay.
I would like to see a simple effort to pass it could possibly even be a resolution, asking the community to volunteer that information at first. Begin to build a registry of vacant buildings, because as we have those, then you can start highlighting them priorities for code enforcement. Because we already have several things that do, in the code enforcement, make sure properties are safe, well-maintained, and not a nuisance. And that could be accomplished that way. And then going forward from there, if that's not accomplishing what we want, then begin to look at more burdensome things, if you will, going forward. That's what I shared in a nutshell.
Right.
What I would be supportive of, I don't know exactly what that sounds like in legislative form, but that would be the idea anyway.
I agree with it. I talked to
That's fine.
Chris about that a bit, and I totally agree with that kind of way forward. At least that gives us somewhere to start. And, will everyone follow that? No, probably not. But still, it gives us a basis to start somewhere, to look into that. And I thought that was a great way to do it. But
Okay.
legislation-wise, that's the tricky. I don't know how you go about doing that.
That sounds like a challenge for the law director, to take those thoughts and put that in, and I think it would still need to be an ordinance, but I'll again defer to her, and come up with a simplified version that's similar to what's been described, and we'll start with a clean slate with that. How about that?
Sounds great.
It's
Well-
almost like maybe taking out the inspections and the fees to kind of start with, because a lot of it is the registration.
Okay, that's fine.
If that's kind of your thought, like getting the names, getting the buildings, getting the addresses, getting the
That's-
owners, getting the landlords, but not going as far as the
Okay.
inspections and the fees.
Although I'm not for this ordinance, I am for some of the things that prompted the desire for some improvement in our community. And I think we should start by reaching out to some of the properties we see as habitually vacant, and reaching out to the owners and saying, ask them what they're, maybe we create a survey, what's keeping them from having these buildings in active use? What are their barriers?
Okay.
What do they think would make a more conducive environment for them to be able to put businesses? I mean, as far as I know, I don't know that we've reached out to very many of them to find out why they're not in use.
We have to some.
I think we should make a coordinated, organized
Fine.
record of that, and that way when in future we have conversations, we can say, well, this one's not in use because of this, or,
Okay.
we have some information behind our choices.
Sounds like a plan.
I'm on board with, like, inviting them to a conversation, whether that's to a workshop or to, like, a public meeting of some sort. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not against the fees, but I think maybe like that first annual fee of like registration, like maybe not the fee the first year, and maybe, I don't feel like this needs to be put on hold, but I do think Counselor Dorman has a good point of like, let's try, I mean, we can try to reach out to them, invite them to, a workshop to have this conversation of like, hey, like, what can we do as a community? Like, why don't you want to rent your building out? What, like, just to kind of learn so we can, if there's, like, I don't know if there's something we're missing, like, that we can, if there's stuff that we can do besides the, the stick portion, I guess, the carrot or the stick portion. If there's something we can do to figure out, like, what we can do as a community. And maybe, while we wait to get a meeting, like, work through the language to this to where we all, like, are in some sort of agreement with how this goes about.
Would it give you enough time by the next workshop to have a draft put together to try to incorporate some of these concepts?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I can try. By the next workshop, I should have something.
I
That's
think
the-
a lot of it though is what you're saying, like, get a hold of these people, ask them why they have the building, what are they planning to do with it? Like, a lot of
I
that.
don't think it
isn't in
requires
here.
legislation to accomplish that, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't think it takes an ordinance to gather information, find out what the barriers are, and find out what lowers those barriers to keep that moving forward. I don't know, I just feel like you need information before you create ordinances as to what that is.
If it helps, most of what I know about that situation is anecdotal from people who want to buy buildings or properties that are vacant and have been vacant for a long time, and the owners won't sell regardless of the price, and also don't give a reason.
Yeah. Some of them won't want to talk to anybody about it.
That's right.
And that's okay, but I think that if we give them an opportunity, like.
And that's fine.
Something.
I feel like, and I don't know this for a fact, but we haven't, I mean, and they're always welcome to public meetings, right? Like, they're always welcome here. But saying like, let's have, because I don't know, I think what Counselor Dorman might be saying, what I'm hearing is like, we don't need to worry about changing the language, like, until we've had some conversations to say,
Sure.
what do we need to do? Like, get their thoughts, their opinions, their experiences first before spending time changing wording that we're not sure where we're at.
I would also like to know who's throwing money at owners that owners are turning down. I mean, I
It's
know.
all anecdotal.
Yeah, so again, I don't think we do legislation on anecdotal either, he said, she said, or whatever. I mean, I guess I would.
Well, at the same time, though, this isn't based on anecdotal information. This is based on, we have a goal that we want to accomplish, and how do we get there? Because, your outlook on how people will respond is a whole lot more positive than, well, I've seen in the past,
Reality.
where, I'm from the government, and we'd like this information, and most people are going to say, my answer is none yet, right? So.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of these people that own, like when you look at some of the stuff downtown, some of that, you look at it's public record who owns it, who's owned it in the past, going back to like 1990. And you see a lot of shuffling, a lot of changing hands. I don't see several that I've looked at, I don't see them going up in value. I oftentimes see them going up a little, back a little. It doesn't seem like they're high dollar cash exchanges. It's not like people are buying land for Walmart here.
No.
I think it's people dreaming a bit, thinking they can make a positive change, maybe finding out they can't do everything they want in their property, or their business they run for a short while doesn't take off, and then they change hands again. And so maybe even look at it historically, what some of the businesses have been, what's worked, what hasn't. I mean, it's composing some of that information to really come up with a vision for what those places could be or would be. And we're not the ones putting the dollars in rehabbing a building. I have no idea what it costs to put a commercial kitchen in the back of an old building, you know, that was built in 1890. I'm gonna guess it's a small fortune. And I'm gonna guess the last time some of those buildings were used for this or that, the rules have changed a lot. And, you know, I don't know that we can legislate somebody coming in and sinking big money into a $40,000, $50,000 building that might cost them $500,000 to open the business. That would be nice there.
Yeah, oh, I mean, you're not legislating people.
That was
like
never
No,
my intent.
no,
But, I mean, that's just saying, hey, instead of sitting on that, why don't you sell it to the guy that wants to buy it and let him sink his money into it? Buy it back after his doesn't work right.
I would be concerned with that legislation, that also that might keep people from wanting to invest in business in that town. That would be a concern I would have.
I had that thought too, wondering about it, because if their dream doesn't work out, then
They feel like they're stuck with it.
there's a major downside to having it vacant for a year in between trying to get a new tenant or whatever else, or could be a major.
That was never a requirement, as long as they're talking and communicating and trying to make a
Which is,
difference.
which is good for current administration.
Good point.
But we always have to be sure that what's in there at the worst fits, because
I understand.
you don't know who's gonna sit in your chair after, in 20 or
Sure.
30 years after you're done.
2 or 3 years.
Or when, these 7 chairs are filled by other people
No,
and
you-
that kind of thing, so.
That's- Are we comfortable with starting off fresh with a new approach?
I just feel like I agree with this legislation. I think there's safety issues, there's all kinds of issues. But I am in agreement that we need to have conversations with the stakeholders that are involved. And, they're gonna have an opportunity to give their input, and I think that's important. As a council member, I feel like that's important. I still think that this legislation's important, but I think having conversations with them also matters,
I think it's become.
and it's fair.
Since we started televising these meetings and we sit up here versus down there for our workshops, I feel like inviting folks to a workshop might be a little intimidating, and there may be a subcommittee meeting with some owners or something more informally, would maybe attract more people to the conversation, or literally a subcommittee meeting uptown.
Absolutely.
That's a good idea.
With a group of people might be way less intimidating, and, meet people on their home turf, maybe even in the properties. But that more lead to more productive, honest conversation than, say, maybe asking them to step up to the mic and answer this question. Like, and they don't have to, it's not an inquisition.
Mhm.
But, to make it meaningful and really exchange information and ideas and get a perspective, that might be helpful.
I think that's a great idea.
And a bunch of us spend enough time floating around uptown, between different events and things, walking, there's opportunities for this conversation.
When the code enforcement letters went out, didn't some go out to businesses recently?
Yes.
Was there any feedback from that anyone called or?
Got a few calls. Most of them were in general, why did I get this? Is there a problem with my building? And we'd explain, no, this was just to let you know what the rules are, because we're gonna start enforcing it. And then there would be a follow-up if in fact there was a problem with the building, and letting them know that you appear to be out of compliance in these areas, contact us, so you can begin to take steps to bring it into compliance. But many times it was an over building that was, wait a minute, is there something wrong with my building? No, there's not. We sent you the rules. We want you to be aware that we're now beginning to enforce what's been on the books for years, about exterior maintenance.
Because I'm gonna assume some of these vacant buildings are probably,
Yes,
failing to comply with some of the code issues, so.
absolutely. Broken windows, lack of paint, yeah.
Do you feel like we've started contacting them?
Oh, we have.
Yeah,
We
and
have.
have we been getting responses, or?
It's slow. It's slow.
And-
I did have some bad news, so to speak. I did interview a candidate to become a code enforcement person. They were not going to be able to begin for a few months, but they had experience and were interested. They called me today and let me know they were no longer interested. So I'm starting from scratch to try to find a staff person to do code enforcement.
And those letters were the 75 letters that went out?
I think something like that, yeah.
See, I would think that that list of addresses would be a good start for making a list of what's vacant, what's not.
Probably the best resource is going to be utility bills. If they're not using any water or very little water, it's most likely vacant.
So we cross-reference those
We can.
75 letters with the utility use,
We can.
just use technology to come up with a working rough estimate?
Of a list of potential vacant buildings, sure, yeah. The issue is never knowing for sure which ones, all
Well,
of
we can use
them.
that
It's a start.
to create a list to do some drive-bys. and
There you go.
We get a rough estimate of what we're talking about.
That's a start, yes. Okay. On to the next issue, Mayor.
Yep, next is the proposed traffic study.
Right, as council has in your packet, a copy of the RFP that we issued for a potential traffic study of the Haskett Road and Hamilton Street area. As you may recall, we had proposed a partnership working with the township because some of the area in this proposed study was still in the township and the school corporation, since much of it is in and around the new schools and the village. What I had initially suggested perhaps was the village cover 45% of the cost, the school cover 45%, and I believe the trustees had agreed that they could come up with the 10%, or looking at it. Looking at it. Well, the school, and so I went ahead and issued it, even though the school had not committed to funding it, just to see what kind of responses we could get. We got two, and I'd like you to take a look at them. It's interesting, the approach of the two engineering firms is very similar in almost all aspects except one, and that's the number of hours that they would expect to complete the study. And there's a very, very significant difference. One firm has 10 times the number of hours compared to the other. And so I think their approach was similar, but the level of detail or how comprehensive their report would be dramatically different, which is obviously going to impact the cost. And so at this point, I did contact the school again today, trying to see if there was any chance they might change their mind. My understanding was no, the school is not going to participate. So the question is, does the village have any interest in moving forward on a study to address problems primarily in the area around the school, and funding 100% of the cost of the study? Is that how you want to move forward, or how do you wish to proceed?
What's the, I didn't see a cost in these.
Because the RFP, it would be based on the number of hours, and so there's not numbers. What you would typically do is select the firm you want to go with and then negotiate a contract. But I expected the study would somewhere be in the $40,000 to $45,000 range, and the lesser of two, the one that had fewer hours, probably would be a little more than that, and the other one who had a lot more hours would be a lot higher than that. But you'd get a very different product. I mean, the one that's 300 hours is going to be a very detailed plan of how the options to correct the deficiencies.
Right.
Where the other one is going to be a broad overview of the options. I guess the real question to me is the village willing to commit that kind of money for a project that is going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, if millions of dollars to actually implement?
So that, my question is two-part.
Sure.
The idea of the study primarily came from discussion in council meetings, correct?
Correct.
So it was driven by our concern of the area and traffic in the area.
Correct.
And we're the ones solely responsible for any of the implementation of any of these plans, correct?
That's what I would expect.
Okay, so,
I'm sorry, with one provision. The school can participate in safe routes to schools. That's funding that can be used on streets and sidewalks.
okay,
That's
but
the
they can
only program.
participate in the funding, whether
Absolutely.
we pay for the study or not.
Correct.
And we need to be willing to pay for,
If you want to move forward, yes.
okay. So we're the ones really on the hook in the end, minus what possible funding.
Yes.
Okay. And it primarily was born out of our concerns, questions, and discussions in council.
Yes.
So,
That was gonna be my question, was outside of the 7 of us, has there been any discussion in the community about a need? Has anybody heard anything?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's what prompted the discussion
Okay.
probably amongst us is people talking about dropping their kids off at school, going up to ball games, going to events, coming and going, just the traffic around that area. I'd never heard anyone complaining about the school or anything to do with the school, but just the infrastructure and the old streets and the stuff that was put there with, you
And
know.
I think if I'm not mistaken, it was initially brought up at the WEMUT meeting at the school, which was back in the spring, maybe the March timeframe. That's when this first got some traction, because there were several folks there that brought up the issues with Hamilton and the traffic there, and the Haskett connector. I mean, I would totally support moving forward with the study. I would hopefully look to the township and to the school, depending on what comes out of this, is
Okay.
if there's an availability to use Safe Route to School funding to help make this a reality, to move forward with, would make that area safer, you know, for everyone involved, residents, kids walking there to school and so forth. I'm sure, you know, we could talk to the township too to see if, you know, there would be any funding available for,
Sure.
because I know a portion of that is in the township as well. So, to me, I think it's a win-win across the board. And granted, we're gonna put all the upfront money into the study, but it is in the village. I mean,
Sure.
the majority of this, a majority of it, is my thought process, so.
Okay,
So,
good.
I have a question on the proposals. So I have a background in commercial estimating, and one of the rules of being an estimator is when your proposals are so extremely off, you need to have a third proposal. So
Okay.
one of these proposals is 3 days worth of work. Another proposal is 41 days worth of work. That's like a really big gap. Can we get another proposal?
Sure.
Because something, like, I just feel like something's not clicking here, like,
That would certainly be an option, and I sent it to 3 firms, but only 2 responded.
okay,
The other option, if you want to move forward, would be to invite them to a workshop and interview them and have them present and explain why the approach they took. Because I said, again, I think the work product's going to be similar, it's just one's going to be much more comprehensive than the other. So the question is, how in detail do you want this study? Are you wanting the big picture, or are you wanting the details? Or
And-
something in between?
and that's where I think that third opinion would come into play, because one of these is wrong, one of these is just wrong, like,
I wouldn't say that, but I understand. I'm happy to go out and solicit a 3rd firm if that's how you want to proceed.
I personally would feel more comfortable with that.
Okay.
Is
Anyone
this
else?
something that
Yeah.
the local engineering firm would be involved in this type of work?
What do you mean, the local?
Broomball Engineering, is that something that
Oh,
they're,
traffic studies?
yeah,
I don't know. I could certainly contact them.
just curious.
What's in their wheelhouse and what's not.
don't think it is, but I could be wrong. I'd be happy to contact them.
Yeah, with a 10X gap between the two, we probably need somebody else to be there.
I mean, if we get
Sanity
3 more
check,
proposals,
yeah.
I think that'd be fine. That's just a,
How about I try to find at least a couple of more firms to respond?
Yeah, that'd be great.
that would be great,
Would that-
thank
How you want to proceed?
I mean, you deal with this kind of stuff every day. Is the 41 days, is that just completely,
That is much greater than I expected. I did not expect that diverse of an approach.
And
I
then
was disappointed the third firm chose not to submit.
I think you wanted to know from us too, despite the 2 different proposals, if say we liked them all, and we're like, yes, do we want to move forward with it? To do the proposal, are we wanting to do the work after it? So if we're paying to get the study done, are we actually gonna move forward with the work? I think that's why the school wasn't willing to commit to the study, because they said, if we pay $20,000 for the study, are you actually gonna do anything with it?
It's
So
a
I
valid
think
point.
I
we
mean,
have to decide too.
if they say they can make it much safer and come up with an idea that just makes a lot of sense and it's $500,000, I think we look at that one way versus a situation that doesn't make it that much different. We look at it and go, and you want $5 million to do that, you know, I think it really, that's a lot of, I mean, I at a certain point, for sure, but there's also dollar amounts that are just not within our realm of possibility.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
I'll give you an example. I think one of the options you'll see is widening Haskell. That there's enough right-of-way to the west. You'd have to take out a couple of big trees, but the sidewalk is far enough off that you, in theory, could widen that, but you'd have to have the cooperation of the township because some of the property's not in the village. So that would be one possibility, but that would be more than $500,000.
I love those 2 trees too.
I do too. I didn't say it was my first choice, but there's
To the
just
west, there's also the issue of the barn too. I mean,
Absolutely.
you can widen it to a certain point at one, but
Yes, yeah, there are some significant obstacles to any of the big fixes. So, let's see, if you agree, let's see what 1 or 2 other firms have to say about it, and then go from there.
Sounds good.
Are you comfortable with that? That's what we'll do. All right.
All right, so next is the aggregate update.
All right, you have a copy of the email and the information on the gas renewal. Mr. Harmon was not available to attend tonight, but he can be here either on the 13th or the 27th in August, either in person or virtually. We have requested additional information from AEP that they will use as they move forward on a new contract. So I guess my question is, do you want Mr. Harmon to be here to answer your questions and explain the next renewal on the aggregate?
Do you want? Doesn't look like there's a lot of interest.
Okay, so he doesn't need to make, we're comfortable, okay, we'll move forward. They've got a new supplier, and you see the numbers. If someone does have questions or wants more information, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll move forward.
Because the aggregation program has been in place for, what, 6 years?
And
7
very
years?
successful.
Not very, even not possibly longer. And
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't-
think there's
I
been
don't-
any issues at all that have come from it.
I just want to make sure that you were comfortable with the changes, and if you wanted more information, I would make sure you had it available.
and every resident is still able to opt out,
Absolutely.
choose their own.
I
To
would
me,
su-
it's all only upside.
Yeah, I would suggest the biggest challenge comes with the peddlers who come in and try to sell other plans and perhaps are less than forthright with the residents.
No, I agree. They talk faster than most people can think.
All right. The last item under old business, if I may, as you recall, we passed a resolution for our next significant project and application, the OPWC, for the sanitary sewer main at the south end of the village. I guess for your information, I provided you a copy of the application. We're asking for approximately $600,000 in grant money. And so I've met with the county. I believe that we'll be in a very competitive position, but we won't know till later this year if in fact we're awarded. So if you want to take a look at that application, if you have any questions between now and the next meeting, don't hesitate to contact me. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you.
And that is all I have. I have no other new business unless someone else does.
Is there any other old business?
I have two things of old business.
Sure.
I was not at the last meeting, and I believe the developer was here, so sorry I missed that. The streetlights in the development, where are we at moving?
My recollection is the council informed the developer of the desire to move forward with the standard streetlights, and he agreed.
Do we have a timetable at all of when?
The last timetable estimate we had from Miami Valley, that it would be at least 6 months before they could begin installing them. Does anyone remember anything differently?
No, that sounds right. Could you follow up with them and see if they've
Certainly,
executed so that
certainly.
see if the time's
Get-
ticking?
Make sure the clock is started. Will do.
Where's the clock at on this now?
On what?
On the whole thing?
The next, I don't know about the clock, the next step will be the legislation as soon as the attorneys have it prepared for you to pass to move forward.
No, I meant on the lights. Like, from the time that we started asking about the
Oh,
street lights to.
How much time has passed?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. More than you like?
Year and a half?
A lot? Yeah.
I'm gonna guess two.
Two, I was gonna say two, but then I thought one and a half sounded
I
better.
wouldn't say that's wrong.
Right.
It's been an issue for quite some time.
Okay.
The other one is, wanted to ask Ben, the 571 construction update going out to Milton Potsdam. Just wanted to see, we close?
Yes,
Will they be
so-
done maybe this week?
No, it won't be this week, but that, still hopefully by the end of the month, is what they're shooting for.
Okay.
Everything's tied in, Tim requested some help tomorrow to work some valves. They're, talking about taking once the old section comes out, then they're working on, the major project after that was a storm crossing, extremely large storm crossing in that project, so they're working on that. So still hoping by the end of the month.
Okay, sounds good. So all the area where there's gravel, where they've replaced the main and so forth, that'll all be paved over with blacktop in that area before everything's open, correct?
Yeah, they're taking the gravel out on some spots, putting in that flowable backfill, and then the pavement will go right on top of the flowable backfill.
Okay, sounds good. And the plan is still, as soon as that is done, then the next project is Hamilton,
Paving.
where
Yeah.
you'll start milling that. And what's the duration from when that start to finish? 3 weeks, 2 weeks?
No, I would say, maybe 3 to 4 days.
Oh, that's it?
probably. Yeah, because we like them to have the top coat on within a certain amount of time from after milling. That way we don't run into a lot of rain possibly or things like that. So once they get in here, maybe day and a half, 2 days of milling, day and a half, 2 days of asphalt, so.
Oh, really
yeah.
quick then?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Now, in relation to that too, I knew you provided some information about possibly looking at the parking lot that's there off of Hamilton, the back of the businesses. How is that?
I
going?
need to see if I got the estimate back from Steve Putterball. He was kind enough, I sent him the dimensions and my original estimate, and then he was gonna get on that and then give us what he thought today's price would be.
Gotcha.
So,
And then it's ultimately up to those businesses that have that parking lot in their, the rear of the buildings to fund that then. That's how ultimately that would have to work then.
Mhm.
Okay. Has there been any conversation with any of the folks in there?
I
with the-
don't, not that I'm aware of.
The last was at a council workshop where many of them were present, but certainly not all. And I don't believe there was an agreement at that time that they were all willing to participate in the cost.
Okay.
All right.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, any new business?
We have third Thursday on August 15th, 5 to 8 p.m. And maybe it's gonna be on Miami?
Hopefully.
Hopefully, it's gonna be on Miami. If not, it's gonna be on Washington. But it will go on. And Rock the Hill is August 17th, which is really exciting. We have Stranger this year, which is like, if you haven't heard of them, they're like really popular in Miami County and Dayton. So we expect some really good attendance. And it's 5 to 9 p.m. That's all I've got.
Any other new business? Open the floor for any motions for adjournment?
I motion we adjourn.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.